goes missing. I'm not quite sure how you go about stealing one of those, but we can find out more after we've drawn the last in the series of Nature Watch.
"350 years ago, here on the island of Mauritius, the last dodo was knocked on the head by a Dutch settler, and at a blow the world lost a remarkable bird, and the English language gained its most vivid image of extinction, as dead as the dodo. Almost 10 years ago, when Nature Watch first came to Mauritius, it looked as though a number of other birds were about to follow the dodo down the river of no return. Because of the destruction of the native forest, the pink pigeon had been reduced to perhaps 20 individuals in the wild. The echo parakeet was down to a dozen birds at most. And as for the Mauritius kestrel, well, that was being described as the world's most threatened bird of prey and was generally thought to be doomed. In 1981, I scrambled up this hill and watched a young Welsh ornithologist, Carl Jones, steal a clutch of eggs from the nest of the last Mauritius kestrel known to be breeding in the wild.
I've got to get into this ledge somehow.
She's come back.
Yes,
oh, she's gone off again.
She's after me. There are 3 eggs. Oh, they look like little chicken's eggs. Don't worry about me for a second. I'm just stuck, that's all.
Got both the male and female up there now, both quite close. The female's to your left and the male's to the right.
Are they agitated?
No, she's been preening, would you believe?
Hmm. I'm coming down. I'll be glad when I get on terra firma.
Back in 1981, that was an act of desperation. Some said it was reckless folly to steal those eggs. I must say I had doubts about it. But today, older and greyer, and with the wisdom of hindsight, I can say it was an inspired act. And for a welcome change, I can bring you a Nature Watch that is unreservedly a conservation success story.
Last year, we hatched 30 eggs. We reared 30 babies. This year, we hatched 52 eggs and we reared 50 babies. So we've got a success rate of something like 97, 98% rearing all our young kestrels. I make it sound easy, but I have to tell you one thing, that when we started, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We made lots and lots of mistakes. But fortunately, they weren't major mistakes, and we didn't lose very many birds or eggs. But now, we know roughly what we're doing, and I think we're on the road to continued success.
To be a really good breeder of rare birds like this, is it just attention to detail, or is it partly a kind of flair?
You have to have attention to detail, of course. You have to get all your things just spot on. You have to understand your birds very, very well. And I think that's what makes this project work, is that everybody we have here are passionate about birds. It's very different from straight science, if you like, because you understand them by what Konrad Lorenz called Gestalt perception. You spend enough time around them, and in the end, you know exactly what they're going to do, even though you don't know why they're going to do it, but you know exactly what's going on. And it becomes intuitive. And that's really the only way to manage and understand extremely endangered species. You need good science, but you also need that sort of feel, if you like.
Yeah.
And that only comes with a lot of time and energy and commitment. You do it for the love, you don't do it for anything else. Fostering is the simplest way of putting birds back into the wild. What we do is take the eggs for rearing in captivity, then we replace them with plastic eggs. We leave them sit on the eggs for about a fortnight, and then we remove the plastic eggs and give them youngsters. And those birds think that they've hatched the eggs, and those youngsters are then successful. At that age, they'll accept the parent feeding them, and they're still young enough so they beg well, but they're robust enough so that if the female's inexperienced and doesn't feed them enough in the first few days, they'll still survive and still be okay.
When you've got a pair of foster parents, these are birds that are living here in the wild, how can you be sure that they're going to look after these precious chicks of yours when you take them out there?
We've now fostered 20, 30 times, and we haven't lost one baby.
Do you think that fostering is actually a better way than hacking, your other method?
It's a simpler way, and it doesn't require any follow-up by us other than just to check that they're okay. But we don't like it very much because those birds then fledge into an area where there's already kestrels. There's a lot of competition for territories, and actually mortality among those birds is much higher. Only about 40% of them will reach 1 year old. Whereas when we put birds in areas where there are no kestrels whatsoever, well then we get 80% survival. Hello? Hello? I think they stage struck.
What's the history on these two, then?
Well, these two were bred here and hand-reared, and they now, well, they're going to be released in a few days old. They're about a month old. And they've been reared together. They're actually the last two birds of the season, and we'll put them out as a sort of a couple.
Where will they actually be released?
We have a release site in the East Coast Mountains. There were kestrels there until the 1950s, and they all disappeared because they sprayed those mountains with DDT and other nasties, and they all died out. And we've reintroduced them there, and we hope to establish a self-sufficient population there in the next 2 or 3 years.
But Carl, you're going to put those out then in an artificial nest site in the forest. At 30 days old, aren't they going to be terribly vulnerable?
Yes, of course they are, but what we do is we put them out in this artificial nest site, and then we'll get somebody to look after them every day. We'll take the role of the parent kestrels and look after them until they're independent. Oh. If I climb up and you can pass it to... Okay.
Fine, I'll pass it up to you then.
Hang on, careful. Oops. Hang on. Nearly fledged before its time. No. Well, they're only 30 days today. This female's nice and strong. She's a bit younger than the male. In you go. Go on, sweetheart.
They've got a nice view of open country here, from here.
Yeah, it's absolutely perfect, isn't it?
And these are the last two, you know?
It's number 49 and 50 of this year.
That's 50 kestrels set free at selected sites on Mauritius in 1 year. In falconers' jargon, the release technique is called hacking them out.
This is a technique whereby you put them out in an artificial nest site, and they gradually come out and they learn their way around, and you feed them every day until they become independent. Well, it sounds very simple, doesn't it? The first birds that came out, they flopped out onto the ground, and they stayed there, and they started playing on the ground. And we thought, this is very cute, and they'd come up and they'd play with his shoelaces. They showed no fear whatsoever. Then a mongoose comes along, and instead of flying away from the mongoose, they actually walked up to the mongoose and tried to play with it. And we thought, my God, panic, you know, all our kestrels are going to get eaten by mongooses. So then we had to start trapping mongooses around our release sites. In the past, we'd studied kestrels in the wild, and we'd found that lots of the babies disappeared, and we didn't know why. And it's now quite obvious. They come out of the nest, play around on the floor, mongooses come and eat them. They're actually fairly nasty.
Cool.
Public enemy number 1. You wouldn't want to get bitten by that, I assure you.
You certainly wouldn't. Of course, those are not native animals, are they? No.
They were introduced in 1900 to get rid of rats at the sugarcane fields. They're a nasty exotic. And what's more, that mongoose, the lesser Indian mongoose, is one of the most successful carnivores in the world. As far as carnivores go, there are only 2 other species that are more successful: the dog and the cat.
I can see what you mean. Well, you've got another one in here. Oh, no, it's not.
Ah, that's a tenrec. What happens
Oh,
is...
you used to keep tenrecs, didn't you?
Yeah.
No,
Well,
he's no harm to the birds, is he?
well, if you put your hand in, he'll bite you to the bone. But other than that, they're fairly harmless. They certainly don't touch kestrels. And what happens is they sort of forage around at night and they always get caught in these traps. We can probably leave this thing go. He's looking a bit dozy. Open it very carefully.
Okay.
And I'll try and grab him.
Come on. Come on.
Julian, you have a real way with animals, I must admit.
Ah, there he is. Ooh.
Would you like to get bitten by that?
No, I wouldn't.
It's a very primitive insectivore. You could say that it's an early cousin of the hedgehog. It was introduced from Madagascar, probably for food, because a lot of the local people eat them. Tastes very nice, I assure you.
You've eaten them, have you?
Only once.
I think we can let him go, Carl.
I think so.
Yeah. Whoop. That's too much. Come on.
Within 3 months of their release, the kestrels are virtually living as wild birds. But Carl and his staff of kestrel babysitters still maintain contact with the birds and make sure they're not short of food.
They must have pretty good hearing, you know, if they can hear this.
Julie's a kestrel babysitter, and she's been doing this for a few months, so they know her. And we're only doing this to help them. We give them a handout of food every day, but they're now becoming rapidly independent. And they'll only be coming in for another 2 weeks or so. And very often birds don't come in the evening. You know, some birds don't come in for a whole week at a time.
Is it possible, Carl, that if they've been finding plenty of food, they just wouldn't come anyway?
Yes.
Come on!
But we'll be very unlucky if we don't get one bird in.
And if we're very lucky, we might get
4 birds.
4 birds in. Right.
Although there are 6 birds released here, but we haven't had 6 coming in for several weeks now. Come on!
Come on!
Listen down here, you can hear alarm calls.
Come on!
I suspect
Come
there's a
on!
bird moving slowly down that valley.
Isn't it amazing? Now,
Eat your heart out, eh?
yeah. Here it comes.
Oh, to go and perch there, that'll be quite nice. There's another bird coming in over here. It's a female. Females are slightly larger than the males.
Do you know these birds individually?
Yes, I've known them since they were eggs.
They were eggs. And these were birds that... How old are they now?
These were born at the beginning of November.
Yeah.
And so they're about 3 months old. They're coming in. Here's another bird coming in.
Here it is, yes.
My God. Hi, come on. They are a bit hungry. They're making a big fuss. There's 2 coming in.
How many we're going to get? What? Oh!
Come on!
This must be unique in the world, isn't it?
It's pretty good.
Come on!
I mean, where
How many
else
have we
can
got?
you possibly go and call in wild birds like this, hmm?
We got 5 birds in. There's only 1 missing. They're not imprinted on us, they're just friendly. It's a great thrill when I come out and see my kestrels in the evening.
Tell me, seriously, I mean, when we were back here in 1981, did you ever dream that you'd see the day when here you were calling in your own...
I dreamt about it all the time, but I didn't think it would happen.
Yeah.
We'll get them all on that tree in a minute. Isn't that beautiful? There's another one coming in at a hell of a pace. Look at that one there.
Yeah.
Here's black bronze. This is the 6th bird. We've had all 6 birds in.
Come on!
Nice. Well done.
Wow. Oh, it was a lovely catch, wasn't it?
Our visit to Mauritius coincided with an event that for Carl and his team was of great significance.
Today, Julian, is a very, very important day for me. We are releasing the 100th captive reared kestrel on this island, Île Secrète, which is an island that we have the lease of. But what's even more important is that we're releasing it on an island which may have been the last place on this earth where the dodo was seen. We're not sure, but there's an early account that suggests that the last one died on one of the islands in this bay, and this one seems the most appropriate. There were many extinctions before the dodo, of course, and there have been many extinctions since. So why does everyone say as dead as a dodo? It's very important because when the dodo became extinct, it was the first time that man realized that the animals on this earth were exhaustible, that he could actually kill them all off. Up until then, they thought it was inexhaustible. So it was on this island we had the dawning of modern conservation consciousness. This is the 100th bird. Its name is Bali. Bali's great-grandparents were filmed by the Central Television team in 1981, I think it was. I've known all Bali's relationships right back to her great-grandparents. So Bali's a very special bird, and we're going to try and release her today. Okay, she's looking. No, she didn't.
Mauritius, as you know, is known for the dodo, the bird which is extinct. It is the symbol of what man should not do. And now with the kestrel, we have an opportunity to pay back to nature what we have taken. And we believe that the kestrel can become the symbol of the positive side of our human nature and what we should do in order to preserve nature as it is and perhaps to restore it back to its pristine value.
If the kestrel is a positive symbol of Mauritius conservation, so is the pink pigeon. 20 years ago, it was the world's rarest pigeon. Now, thanks to Carl Jones' captive breeding program, I was able to play a small part in its return to the wild.
We've got to pull this very gently.
Right.
And it'll open the door, and hopefully the pigeon will come out.
Right, no, I'm
Just
pulling
pull.
now.
Yes, just keep pulling.
Okay.
Just open it up. Oh, that's nice. Okay. And just keep it taut. There you are.
Oh, here she goes.
Oh, wasn't that perfect?
Wonderful. And that bird's got a transmitter on,
It
presumably?
has, yes.
Ah, now what, this is not the same one, is it?
No, I'm not sure. Oh, that's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, great.
There are several birds in the area that have been released.
Yeah.
So they hopefully will stay in a little bit of a flock.
And of course you want them to come back, don't you?
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
We've bred a lot, so we decided to try some releases. And I thought of putting them in a local botanic gardens. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to have pink pigeons like pigeons in Trafalgar Square? You go there and there's world's rarest pigeons walking around. So we did it, and it was a fantastic success. But then we never thought that as soon as they breed and become visible, the local children started to shoot them with catapults. There's these pigeons, and they cost us thousands of pounds to produce, and they were ended up in somebody's curry. So regrettably, we had to catch up the last remaining pink pigeons and rethink the whole thing. But here again, we were being a little bit too enthusiastic. It can work, it shows what you can do with pigeons, but there hadn't been a good enough educational program. We hadn't turned the people on to pink pigeons. I thought we'd release them. When they're there, people would get to love pink pigeons, and it would act as an educational campaign. Clearly, the education had to come first, not after. So it was partly our fault, but we learned a great deal from it. And from that, we now have another release program, still in its early stages, but it's proving to be more successful, and that's back into the native forest. We found this area where there were pink pigeons up until the mid-70s. It's right in the middle of the forest, and also, if you look around, there's a whole mosaic of different habitats. There's tall forest and short forest and open areas and swampy areas and gorges and so on. And we wanted to do it as a natural experiment. What makes pink pigeons tick? When we release them here, where will they go? What sort of forest will they utilize? We wanted to release pigeons and find out a bit more about them. Well, there were many, many problems, and every bird has been different, so it's very difficult to give you some generalizations. But what we did was we put them in a cage, leave them there for a month, or about a month, and then one day open the door and leave them come out. But we'll always keep a decoy in a cage next door, so they'll always sort of come back. And what we found out was this: they came out and they didn't know what to do. Some of them panicked, and sort of flew around in big circles, thought, oh my God, and sort of landed on trees, and the branch bent, oh my God, and jumped to another branch and so on. So they're obviously very, very twitchy. And some of them actually disappeared and we never saw again. Now then, we thought, this is a bit silly. Pigeons are supposed to home and all this, but certainly not pink pigeons. So what we do now is we release all the birds with transmitters on, and we also cut 1 or 2 wing feathers, some of the primary feathers, so that when they do come out, they can't fly very far. And of course, by the time they've molted those feathers, they actually know the area quite well, and then they'll home nicely and they'll stay around the area.
If the pink pigeon provided Carl with a challenge, it's nothing compared with the daunting task presented by this parakeet. Never before has this bird been filmed in the wild.
10 years ago, everybody thought the echo parakeet was an embarrassment. They said, my God, there's no way that bird can survive. We knew of just a handful. We only knew of about 3, 4, 5 individuals. Everybody thought they were geriatric. There was no sign of any breeding whatsoever in the population. And we all held our breath, and we thought it was going to become extinct. Hello, you funny thing. It's the world's rarest parrot and one of the world's most endangered birds. Do you like that?
I do, yes.
It's the Mauritius parakeet. Locally, we call it the echo parakeet, but of course it is the Mauritius parakeet.
Because it's the only native parakeet.
It's the only one that's surviving on Mauritius. Yeah. There are 3 in captivity.
Yeah.
There are, in fact, only 12 individuals left in the wild. But only 3 of those were females. And of those females, only 2 nested this year. So it's actually very, 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 very rare. Some of those males are probably geriatric. These baby echo parakeets represent the total productivity of the echo parakeet this year, and they represent 20% of the world population.
Carl, well, you've demonstrated that this intervention can work, at least on a small scale. Is it a principle you think we can apply in the big conservation issues?
Well, absolutely. I think that management has got to be the way forward. As you know, the world is such a radically altered place. There are very few pristine areas left. Everybody talks about saving pristine habitats, but where the hell are they, you know? There are only tiny, small pockets of them. When we can save whole ecosystems by just leaving them, fine. But for most of the world, that's not going to work. And I think we have to go in there and do something and look after them, whether they be black rhinos or Mauritius kestrels or whether they be tree frogs. And I think it has to be the way forward. And what's really interesting is we're just at the dawning of this whole sort of, I don't know, revolution in sort of conservation thought, if you like. And I think that in the years to come, we're going to have seen some very, very exciting progress in sort of conservation ideas and technology.
My last evening in Mauritius, and Carl had promised a treat to show me birds I first met as eggs lying in his incubator nearly a decade ago. To have saved a species from extinction must be extraordinarily gratifying. And when the birds themselves remember the man who saved them, it clearly adds another special dimension to the pleasure.
That was the last in the present series of Nature Watch. Next Tuesday at this time, Survival returns for a new series.